Angeles, and I settled in the East Mountains, and then I ended up moving back here and settled here and decided I was never going to move again, and that was my whole premise. And once I did that, when you kind of like say I'm never going to move again, you suddenly realize that you have to have a different kind of relationship with your neighbors. It's no longer of like, well, if I don't like this neighbor, I can leave, but it's really like forces you. So I met my neighbor who lived next door to me, and I was kind of intimidated by him. He was pretty rough guy, but we started to kind of run into each other in our backyards, and pretty soon we started talking about plants. And he was very interested in gardening, and I had a huge backyard, and he had nowhere to garden. And so we used to sit back there, and we would kind of talk across the fence, and we would sort of like daydream about making a salsa garden where we would grow tomatoes and peppers.
Salsa
and
garden.
Things. Exactly. So we talked about it for a year, and we finally did it. We actually got a grant to create a farm, and that was how we started. And so we got together and we built a garden in my backyard. It was the start of this farm here.
That's dope. That's amazing.
And it was like over those plants and that food that we grew together, that he and I really became. He became one of my best friends, and now I'm the godfather of his kid.
Wow.
And he's the guy that runs this farm right here. And I had never thought, my dad always gardened and food was always just this thing, but that was the first time that I realized that actually food and the process of growing food had a power to it in terms of connecting people in a totally different way and creating a different sense of community.
Wow.
So like I would love to kind of present myself as being somebody that's out there and planting all these things, you know what I mean? But I'm not. I'm not a farmer. I'm not even really a gardener. I have very limited skills as far as all that goes. But I'm really, so like I really think of food as, like I talked about a minute ago, of that sort of connective tissue for people. So if you think of like the existing food system and the way that the function that food plays in our society today, it doesn't play that role. It's been commodified. It's been turned into something all about money. So there's a whole system that's sort of been developed around that. Systems are really what drive and kind of keep things in their place and keep things operating in a certain way. And there's a whole system around food. And so like my work really is about how do I help create a different system within that system. So like this and like La Cosecha and things like that, where it's like, how do we go back and recapture food as a mechanism for connecting people? And then what is the system that has to be in place to enable that to happen?
Right on.
And so I spend a lot of my time writing grants, designing programs, organizing people, getting people to work together, all in the interest of envisioning a different system that lets food return to what it was really supposed to be. So I can't remember the name of the poet, but there was this line that